Civil War?
Oh, shoot, it's East or West, right?
Well, it's the Civil War, so it's the civilians versus whoever was in power.
Yes, spring breakers being quizzed on their knowledge of American history and beyond. And let me tell you something. If we only had a Department of Education, maybe we could raise people that know something. On the other hand, where the Democrats going to get voters if we started raising people that knew something and didn't think the American Civil War was between East and West. Who won? Great stuff, spring break. They might have been drinking. They might have been microdosing LSD or something. But every day is an IQ test. And in these videos, let's just say the IQ lost. And a very good Monday to you. Welcome back. Once again, we have one headline today. Trump remains president. Trump remains president is the headline. Trump unleashes on New York Times Peter Baker as sycophant. It's a little bit generous, but I think President Trump has been more measured lately, don't you think? I think more subdued. Also, President Trump went to an NCAA wrestling event in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where he was cheered and the crowd chanting USA, and it always frightens the Democrats when crowds chant USA. They don't like that chant. They like other chants, but not that USA chant, not at all. But Trump cheered, and this is the headline that the left-wing radicals at Mediaite posted. Trump cheered, booed, and protested at NCAA wrestling event. There were a couple of self-immolations and the self-detonated suicide vest. The Democrats might as well be Hamas. Oh, yeah, they're protesting against the Jews over the weekend, too, and in favor of a radical Islamic terrorist, a genocidal death cult called Hamas. The Democrat Party, they dress like Hamas. They act like Hamas. They smell like Hamas. That might be the worst of all. It's hard to say for certain. But they've got their Palestinian headdresses on and face masks to conceal their identities, and yet they have bullhorns. You know, if you walk around yelling through a bullhorn, you probably shouldn't camouflage your face, disguise your face. Just going to use voice recognition programming on you and send you to prison in El Salvador. El Salvador. Well, they run a nice, clean, neat prison there in El Salvador, don't they? Democrats should mostly end up there, I think. Trump cheered, booed, and protested at NCAA wrestling event. Really what happened was he showed up and the crowd went wild and they cheered him endlessly and it was very loud. And the news media, they said, somebody said that there was a boo over there. So they put the boo in the headline, although you can't really find the boo if you watch the video or listen to the audio. We'll play some of that for you. And then they had some communists outside that did any of them self-immolate? Because we haven't had a good fatal self-immolation lately. I think we might be overdue for one of those. The Democrats keep providing us with suicidal self-immolations because, you know, they're kind of wacky, I've got to say. Wah. And, of course, we have the Democrat judges waging lawfare against President Trump. Lots of lawfare. A federal judge who blocked President Trump from firing bureaucrats and stripping Perkins Coie, that's a Washington Democrat law firm that we've heard all about since the fake dossier that was Hillary Clinton's opposition research. And stripping Perkins Coie's security clearances is on tape, going on a crazy tirade against Trump. This is the Democrat judge, an Obama judge, who's blocking President Trump from everything she can block President Trump from doing. And it turns out they always post these videos of themselves showing how crazy they are. And then we learn it, and the news media ignores it because they're the filthiest, most corrupt institution in America, the American news media. But this federal judge that blocked President Trump, oh, you're not the head of the executive branch. You can't do anything about the ever-expanding government universe. And Perkins Coie, this hardcore Democrat political operative law firm in Washington, President Trump said, I don't think these people should have security clearances anymore. And this judge, this Democrat judge, jumped in and said, oh, you can't do that. Yeah, I'm in charge of this country. And now a video has emerged of her at a crazy gathering of the Women's White Collar Defense Association. They always have to bring race into it, don't they? These white. Why does the collar have to be white? And she's railing against Trump. She should probably be cuffed and dragged away to El Salvador and have her head shaved by the inmates there in the yellow jumpsuits. Amazing stuff. Also, a funny story today. Fox News has a story. J.D. Vance, he's Vice President of the United States. Those girls on the beach wouldn't know that, but J.D. Vance recalls his wife texting him under the table at dinner. And this is kind of fun. They're in the Silicon Valley in California. And Mrs. Vance seems to be a lovely and talented person. Texted J.D. Vance, and J.D. Vance revealed what the text was. I'll warn you, there's a curse word in there. She's talking about these people in Silicon Valley, and she didn't think they were entirely normal. Didn't think they were normal. Also, Miranda Devine at the New York Post, an actual news reporter who reports news and the truth, which will get you in trouble in the news media these days, big trouble in River City. Miranda Devine with an exclusive in the New York Post. Trump to grant full pardon to Hunter Biden associate and whistleblower Devin Archer. Isn't there some kind of an animated spy series called Devin Archer or something? But Devin Archer got the $1 million no-show job with Burisma in Ukraine too. Devin Archer did, and then didn't he was convicted of fleecing a Native American tribe, an American Indian tribe, of tens of millions of dollars, because that's what Democrats do. Then they send other people in on horseback to shoot everybody because, speaking of which, the Democrats, you know how they like shooting people. The problem was never our guns. It was always their sons. Here's a story out of New Mexico over the weekend. That's one of our 50 states for Democrats following along and not another country. There's great stuff on the beach, the spring breakers. They asked him to name one country that borders one American state that borders Canada. And one of the college students says, Asia. Asia is one of our 50 states that borders Canada. If you have a degree, even a high school degree, it should be stripped away. But here's the story out of New Mexico. Channel 7 Eyewitness News. 4 arrested in mass shooting that killed 3 and injured 15 at New Mexico Park, where the kids were having kind of drag races with cars. 4 people have been arrested in connection with a mass shooting in Las Cruces, New Mexico. Happened Friday night, left 3 teenagers dead and 15 others injured. 3 dead, 15 injured. Tomas Rivas, 20 years old, and a 17-year-old boy not named because he's 17, were arrested, according to Las Cruces police. The Democrats want to defund the police because they want more shooting. Another 17-year-old boy and a 15-year-old boy were also arrested. But what was going on there, you might want to know. Kind of an interesting event because you got your, people, 3 killed, 4 arrested, 15 wounded. And I don't know if anybody's a member of any gangs from south of the border, but we got Andrew Madrid and Jason Gomez and Dominic Estrada, and they were killed, a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 19-year-old, and the 9 male and 6 female victims ranging in age from 16 years old to 36 years old. But that's kind of a big deal, and they're having basically drag races out on the street. And then 50 to 60 shots were fired, and if it is all MS-13 or all Tren de Aragua out of Venezuela, the news media will bury it. In fact, they don't care about this at all because the names are wrong. That's your media. Boy, are they not on the side of civilization. They are not the good guys. So I want to keep my ear to the ground on that, too. But fun story by Miranda Devine reporting news. Full pardon for Hunter Biden whistleblower Devin Archer, and maybe he can come out and start telling truth upon truth now that, because the Biden family went to put him in prison, the Biden Justice Department. He turned out he started talking out of turn. So being the left, they either shoot him or they try to put him in prison, and they've been trying to put him in prison for decades. President Trump saying he's going to give him a full pardon. That's fascinating, and it'll be interesting to see whether Devin Archer wants to come forward and start telling the truth about the Biden family. He was a CEO of at least one Biden family corporation. They had dozens of corporations, even though they don't have a line of work to speak of other than peddling influence in the U.S. government. But we have that. Also, funny story, mocking CNN, but just by, playing the audio. CNN host blasts liberal reaction to domestic terror against Tesla. They all love the domestic terror against Tesla. We were playing it from the Daily Show last week and Jimmy Kimmel and also Fox News reporting Jimmy Kimmel, ABC face mounting backlash over making light of Tesla attacks. They love the violent terrorist attacks, especially the firebombs and all that stuff. And when you say mounting backlash, do you think they're talking about that cowboy movie? Think that's what they're talking about? I think they're slipping that in there, if you will. Should you say slipping that in there when we're talking about this? Also, the nation of Colombia, they're seeing the light when it comes to President Trump being president of the United States. And the headline from the New York Post, again, Colombia caves to Trump demands after $400 million threat over campus anti-Semitism. Oh, it's Columbia. I apologize, Columbia University. Because the countries are also folding to Trump all over the place in South America. Columbia University caves to Trump demands after $400 million threat over campus anti-Semitism. Will institute mask ban and more oversight. But immediately they were out at Columbia University wearing their jihadi headdresses and masks and brought the bullhorns. And they're calling for a death to the Jews. And then I love that they go around scratching swastikas and spray painting swastikas on Tesla automobiles. And then they turn around and in the next minute, they're calling for death to Israel and death to the Jews. Again, I don't think they learned much about history when they were aging. They weren't growing up. They were just aging. Isn't that amazing? So, but yeah, no, also in Latin America, Venezuela has said, okay, we'll take the deportation flights because Trump explained to them in no uncertain terms that it's time for them to start behaving like a country where there's at least one adult. So they in Venezuela have started taking the flights, which they said they would refuse to take, of our illegal aliens that we're deporting. And I'm not sure, maybe it's the video out of the prison in El Salvador that caused the people of El Salvador to go to Nicolas Maduro. Was he at that racing event in New Mexico where everybody got shot? Hard to say. Amazing stuff. So we've got that. And pro-Palestinian protesters defy university order. Stage march across University of Pittsburgh campus. I tell you, the college campuses, it's not just the Ivy League on the East Coast, and it's not just Berkeley. Every college campus is raising, it's the Church of the Poisoned Mind. Isn't that an old song? That's in the Church of the Poisoned Mind. And I got to tell you, the Democrat Party is the Church of the Poisoned Mind. And college campuses are toxic hate cults, kind of like Hamas. And that's why they all dress up like Hamas, and they calling for death to Israel. Also, the Democrats, with their illegal aliens, they love illegal aliens and they hate Americans. And they're violently, criminally insane. And their job is to make violent criminal insanity more popular across the country. Also, their boy Mahmoud Khalil, speaking of genocidal racists and anti-Semites. Mahmoud Khalil, the Democrats are all about getting him. I think they want to run him for Congress, don't they? Amazing stuff. But in Massachusetts, even CBS News has been forced to admit now, the Democrats are releasing illegal alien child rapists on $500 bond. You're an illegal alien. You've been arrested for sexually assaulting a child. And the Democrats are like, what do you put 10% down? It's $50. It's a case of beer. You're free to go. And do they turn them over to ICE? No. You're free to go. Illegal alien gang member child rapists free on $500 bail in Massachusetts. Amazing stuff. Secretary Kristi Noem will visit that El Salvador prison, and we'll get more video. I think the video is good for everyone. Great stuff. We've got moronic Democrats and LGBTQQ and other weekend fun news coming up. So don't go anywhere. Chris here with a list of things that none of us should trust. The Washington Post, the New York Times, anything on CNN. Here's a list of things that I do trust. The Washington Times. Support real journalism for just $1 a week at washingtontimes.com/Chris. Bum, 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 bum. Yeah, we do have a lot of fun audio. I know there's a lot of hard news out there today, too, but there's it's been a weekend, so Democrat, which is the party of insanity and violent crime and terrorism and mental illness, firebombing and suicide attacks and self-immolation and slavery. You know, the Democrat Party. The wheels have come off. Oh, we got some AOC, too. Oh, and Bernie Sanders doesn't know how to pronounce AOC's name. That's that Bernie, and he was on camera. These are not smart people. Let's grab a phone call, Michael. Let's go to Chris, calling from Marshall, Virginia. Christopher, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Good morning, sir, and happy Monday.
Thank you.
I know, we were successful in returning the rightful name to Mount McKinley and to Fort Bragg. Uh-huh. I know that you have, I think the time has come for us to start a petition for the renaming to the Hiram Revels building, but even the Senate office building. Uh-huh. And even more than that, I think it's really high time we pay some attention to the fact that George Berkeley was, until after his death, an unrepentant slave owner. He advocated for slavery, and I think it's time we eradicate his name from all buildings and all universities and Berkeley, California. Time to rename it. What should we rename it? How about Plante?
Well, that'd be a ton of fun. My family would enjoy that. Yeah, Berkeley, California, and UC Berkeley. You're absolutely right. Named for an unrepentant, proud slave owner. And that means he's in good with the Democrats, right? Because the Democrats are the party of the bullwhip and everything else. And you're right. Look, I've been saying for years, and now might be the time to rename the Russell Senate Office Building the Hiram Revels Senate Office Building, and with good reason. And the Democrats, they're fighting the oligarchy. Now that like two members of the oligarchy have left their plantation where they wield the bullwhips and the torches and the ropes and the hanging trees. You know, the Democrat Party. They have a long history of murdering everybody. Womp, womp, womp. Whack-a-doodle-doo. Also a great story that came out over the weekend, and it is wonderful, that Gen Z people are turning out to be, from the Democrat perspective, traumatizingly conservative. Turns out this law of unintended consequences thing may be coming home to roost on the Democrat Party. For how long have I been pointing out the true and real history of the Democrat Party? They're the party of everything bad in the history of this country. Name something bad, especially racist, and you'll find a Democrat at every turn, from every hog that stood in every schoolhouse door on down. They're the plantation people. Let's take another phone call before I get to this fun story about Gen Z. Because This is shocking to the Democrat Party, and they are freaking out. They should really have a big Jonestown event on the Mall in Washington, I think. They could wear their pink hats, and who knows what they're going to do. Let's take another phone call, Michael, because Richard calling from Manassas we're on a theme here today, and it's a good thing. Chris called in from Virginia a short time ago, said it's time to strip the name of Berkeley, California, and the University of California at Berkeley off of the university, because turns out the founding father of the town of Berkeley and the university there was a slaver, and the Democrats love that. They why do you think they want all these illegal aliens in the country? They love cheap labor that they don't have to care about. And for the Democrats, the Republicans had to take their slaves away from them in the first American Civil War, led by first Republican President Abraham Lincoln, who they shot in the head and murdered. But never mind that. And their president in the Civil War, Jefferson Davis, the Democrat president of the Confederate States of America. But that's your Democrat Party. So turns out Berkeley is named after a slaveholder. It's time to rename the city. Fun article from 2022 at the Berkeley Side, a local publication in Berkeley, California. George Berkeley was a slave owner, racist, and colonialist who was considered among the luminaries of Western philosophy at the time. It was some time ago. As many of you are likely aware, the board of the University of California, Hastings College, and of the Hastings College of the Law, recently decided to change the school's name. The decision was prompted in part by an article in the New York Times that examined how Serenus Hastings, the school's namesake, played a significant role in the genocide of indigenous people in Northern California during the Gold Rush. Hastings was highly regarded in his time, served as Attorney General of California. The Democrats were very busy then, but now Berkeley is no stranger to changing the names of buildings and institutions after coming to learn of the reprehensible actions or beliefs of its namesake. So this is great stuff. And then they point out the city of Berkeley, his namesake, George Berkeley, was a slave owner, racist, and colonialist. Berkeley was highly regarded in his time, considered among the luminaries of Western philosophy, but when Berkeley came to America, he bought 3 slaves for his Rhode Island plantation. So he was an early Democrat, obviously. And he quartered them in the cellar of his Whitehall home. So I always talk about how the illegal aliens here curl up in dog beds near the hot water heater in the basement of these Chevy Chase homes where rich people that call themselves liberals live, right? And I told you about one of the live-in, will you raise my children? I'm kind of busy people. And their in-house person was called Liberty. Her name was Liberty, and I always called her Irony. Because she had so little liberty. But never mind that. And Chris was also talking about, and he's right about UC Berkeley and Berkeley, California. They should have the name stripped off of it. And then the Democrats can fight in favor of keeping the name of the slaveholder that they're still honoring all these years later. And for many years now, I've been saying that the U.S. Senate has 3 office buildings across the street from the Capitol. And one of them is the Russell Senate office building, right? And that's named for Richard Russell, a Democrat senator from Georgia, who was a segregationist, racist. I believe that Joe Biden was there when they named the building for Richard Russell. He was a racist Democrat senator through the 1970s. And I believe that Joe Biden was a colleague of his, and Joe Biden voted to name the building, I think that's right, the Russell Senate office building. Now, he was a devout Democrat, segregationist Democrat, racist Democrat, And the building, the Republicans, who are not good at politics, I've been saying for how long now? More than 10 years, probably 15 years. Time to rename the Russell Senate Office Building the Revels Senate Office Building, because Hiram Revels was the first black person to serve in the United States Senate. And Hiram Revels was naturally a Republican because no self-respecting black person would have been a Democrat for a very, very long time, around the Civil War, after the Civil War, until the Democrats erased their history with the help of corrupt people in academia and the news media. But Hiram Revels was a great American, a black guy, and it's back when senators were chosen by the state houses and not by popular votes. But Hiram Revels was a Republican, a politician, a minister in the AME, Episcopal Church, the African Methodist Episcopal Church. He was a college administrator. He was actually born free out of slavery in North Carolina. And an amazing, amazing story. As a Republican, he served in the United States Senate, and the first black person to serve in the Congress, anywhere, House or Senate, and kind of a big deal. And if Republicans knew how to do politics, they'd make political hay out of this. And if the Democrats want to keep the Russell Senate Office Building, named for the racist, segregationist Democrat senator from Georgia, if they want to keep it named the Russell Senate Office Building, then they can defend what they promoted and defended, which is segregation and racism and everything else. Amazing stuff. Hiram Revels also served in the American Civil War on the Union side, as you might imagine, as a chaplain. And he's an amazing story, and he should be the person that the Senate, they call it RSOB, then the HSOB, the Hart Senate Office Building, and I don't know. So it'd still be the RSOB, but it'd be the Revels Senate Office Building. And Republicans, if they knew what politics was all about, I think that they would be in favor of this. I'd like to help them with it. So, United States Senator from Mississippi, 1870 to 1871, and he moved on to big things in his life. A remarkable story. Now, with that said, let's go to the telephones. Let's go back to the telephones, Mike. Let's go to Richard calling from Manassas, Virginia. Yeah. Richard, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Thank you for that setup, Chris. So, keeping with your theme, a man named Elihu Yale was a big man in the East India Trading Company, and his history is that he helped the British move slaves around India around the 1700s, and he made a lot of money doing so. He even owned a couple of slaves, and he used his money to found Yale University. And so the Skull and Bones guys are founded by a guy who was in the human trafficking business. So let them defend their university being founded by a human trafficker.
So Yale University and Berkeley, California, and University of California at Berkeley. And you're absolutely right about Elihu Yale. It's a pretty amazing story because you're right, he was in India, if I'm not mistaken, in the slave trade during his time of governor of Fort St. George, Madras, which is now Chennai in India, a huge city. I've been to Chennai in India, where he earned his fortune. And he used his fortune to create Yale University. And he was, in the British Empire. Elihu Yale profited from the slave trade during his time as governor of Fort St. George in what was then Madras, like the clothing. It's colorful, the colorful clothing. And the Democrats, they shouldn't be allowed to escape their racist slaving past, but because they have secured information dominance in the United States, Richard, and in the media and on university campuses primarily, in education. So we raise people to not know anything about the history of the United States, and certainly the Democrat Party has effectively erased the history of the Democrat Party, which is the history of racist and nefarious deeds in the United States of America. And I love the fact that you brought it up. You were listening to Chris, I think, and Berkeley, California, and Hiram Revels, first African-American to serve in the Congress, U.S. Senator from Mississippi after the Civil War, put there by Republicans and the Democrats. The Democrat Party, the history of the Democrat Party, honestly. And look at them now. I got to tell you, Richard, now they're the party of anti-Semitism and political violence, and they love this term cosplay. It's a stupid word, I think, but they dress up in costumes and they pretend that they're Hamas because they support Hamas, which is a genocidally racist death cult drenched in the blood of innocents. And the Democrat Party has decided that they support Hamas and not those pesky Jewish people in Israel and the state of Israel itself. Aren't they amazing, Richard? The Democrat Party, what is up with them?
Party of death and slavery.
They are. And I got to tell you, I invite Democrats. We haven't heard from Mike the Lib recently. In fact, we had a couple of calls last week suggesting that we should ask the police to do a welfare check on Mike the Lib to make sure he's okay, make sure he hasn't self-immolated or anything, because, the Democrats, they're losing what's left of their minds. Amazing stuff. Richard, thank you for the Yale University story. That's great stuff. Yep. Great. Thank you. We talk about history and about facts, and people learn things here that you could bring to the dinner table and present to your dastardly Democrat cousins and neighbors and all that stuff. But I got to tell you, I'm going to have to put all this together in one neat package one of these days. Richard, thank you very much. Thanks for the call, buddy. Good stuff. Now, there is a story today which is kind of fun, and it's got the usual suspects, and they're a bunch of clowns at Axios, and they got these left-wing hacks, Jim Vandehey and Mike Allen. Speaking of cosplay, they dress up and pretend to be journalists, and Axios, I think they founded Axios, right? They're going to sell it, and they're going to get rich because some communist will buy it from them and keep it as a Democrat Party propaganda tool, which is what it is now. But I've got a great story that I want to share with you coming up. Top Democrats tell us their party. That's Jim Vandehey and Allen's party too, Mike Allen and Jim Vandehey. So they're the Democrat Party pretending to be journalists. Top Democrats tell us, that's plural, their party is in its deepest hole in nearly 50 years. But since they shot the Kennedys or what? What's up with that? And they fear things could actually get worse. Yeah, I think things could actually get worse too. But when you hear about this, I mean, the poll numbers, I've been sharing the poll numbers with you too. But wait till you hear what they're saying at the left-wing Axios with Jim Vandehey and Mike Allen. They're quoting some dim-witted Democrats who, of course, need to keep it a secret because the truth is not their bag. But wait till you hear what they're concerned about, those rascally Democrats. Yeah, I have an amazing story for you about the Democrats panicking. They're terrified that young people, especially young men, are all becoming Trumpers, and that immigrants are all becoming conservatives, because I think people are recognizing, maybe listening to this radio show and this radio station, that the Democratic Party is a big lie, and they're not what they claim to be, what they pretend to be, nor have they been for a very long time what they pretend to be. But poll numbers by Democrats have them in a flop sweat panic. I'm going to have that coming up after the top of the hour. Honestly, some of the numbers are quite striking. You will remember them when I share these numbers with you. You might want to get your pen and pad out, your reporter's notepad, because when people come home from college and say, no, that's not, here it is, I'm going to have all the stuff for you. All right, let's go back to the telephones, Michael. Let's go to Dale calling from Ashburn, Virginia. Dale, you're on the Chris Plante Show.
Yeah, Chris, the Democrats, want to fight instead of just renaming things. Let's give Chuck Schumer a chance to redeem himself and bring up one of these 80-20 issues like women in sports, but don't let him just, deny us, with the 60 votes. Make them actually do a good old-fashioned filibuster.
Well, and get them on the record and debate these things on the floor like a Congress. When the Senate was young not so long ago, it was called the greatest deliberative body on the planet Earth. And that title certainly has escaped the United States Senate, sadly. But we are supposed to be debating these great issues of our day. The Democrats obstruct everything because they're the party of the bullwhip and of cheap labor, and they're anti-women. Look, something else they got away with, Dale, is it was the Democrat Party that fought against the 19th Amendment, which gave women the right to vote. Republicans fighting to get women the right to vote. Democrats fought against it successfully for about 2 decades to keep women from getting the vote. And now they're the party of women, thanks to Bill Clinton and Anthony Weiner and all the, I got to tell you, Harvey Weinstein and Jeffrey Epstein. They're the party of women. And Pound Me Too. They're the party of Pound Me Too. Aren't they amazing? But you're right that the Republicans on the Hill have to, like President Trump is picking the fights, and he's picking the right fights on almost every issue, certainly. And Republicans on Capitol Hill need to pick these fights so the Democrats have to defend everything bad that they're supporting out in the light of day on the floor of the Senate, on the floor of the House of Representatives, and beyond at town halls and so on, where they're taking a lot of grief, the Democrats are. But you're right, Dale, and fight them on renaming Berkeley and Yale and the Russell Senate office building, and remind people of who the Democrat Party is and what their history is, because we know the news media and academia are not doing that, right?
Right. I mean, that's the thing is, have a chance to open up debate, and can they sustain 72 or 100 hours?
I hope your car didn't go underwater. I hope that you didn't crash off of a bridge or anything into the Potomac River. But your phone just went all gurgly on us. Listen, Dale, you are right. You're on the correct side of everything, of truth, justice, and the American way, and of history. Got a lot more coming right up.